Hello, everyone. Welcome to BIMS Week 2. Today we are here with our keynote speaker, and welcome to The Water Brings We. I am Dr. Jeanette Davis. I am a marine microbiologist, a children's science book author, and also the Chief Innovation Officer of Black and Marine Science, the nonprofit. Again, today you are tuning into Welcome to the Water Bring We, the maritime story of the Gullah Geechee Nation. Today, we are going to turn it over to our moderator, Dr. Shante Davis, who is going to be, again, moderating this session. And just to give you a little bit of background about our moderator today, Dr. Shante Davis is a fish biologist with a background in genetics and marine science. She uses genetic tools to understand how the environment impacts the genetics of fish populations. Currently, she uses her knowledge of genetics and other scientific skills for the management of fisheries and government. She chose marine science as a career because she wanted to spend more time outside in nature, and throughout her career, she was able to accomplish just that. Currently, through her work, she is able to assist in the recovery and conservation of the species that exist in our environment. So I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Dr. Shante Davis, and she will take us from there.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Fun being in a session with two doctors. This session I am looking forward to because it is a time to get back to parts of our culture and heritage that connect us to the ocean through this great history that we share in our nation. And I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, who is going to speak to some of that rich history that we have here. Our speaker today is Queen Quet, Chieftess and Head of State for the Gullah Geechee Nation. Queen Quet is a published author, computer scientist, lecturer, mathematician, historian, columnist, preservationist, environmental justice advocate, environmentalist, film consultant, and the artivist. She is the founder of the premier advocacy organization for the continuation of the Gullah Geechee culture, the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition. Queen Quet has not only provided histomusical presentations throughout the world, but was also the first Gullah Geechee person to speak on behalf of her people before the United Nations in Geneva, Switzerland. Queen Quet was one of the first of 7 inductees to the Gullah Geechee Nation Hall of Fame. She received the Anointed Spirit Award for her leadership and for being a visionary. This year, the governor of South Carolina presented her with the Order of the Palmetto Award, which is the highest honor that the state has to give to any citizen. Queen Quet has received approximately 300 awards and honors, including multiple Queen Quet Days and keys to cities throughout the United States and the Gullah Geechee Nation. Queen Quet was selected, elected, and installed by her people to be the first Queen Mother, an official spokesperson for the Gullah Geechee Nation. As a result, she is referred to as Queen Quet, Chieftess and Head of State for the Gullah Geechee Nation. And we welcome her today to give the keynote address.
Away, Chile Jordan, get away, oh, Chile Jordan, get away, Chile Jordan, I want for cross over for see my Lord. Whether we dare, Anisha water, I crack we teeth so. Why we beat the drum like we ancestors been a do. Back yonder, in the bush harbor, in the brush harbor. Oh, they gotta get your first association. Remember who we be. Hope so they shall cast nuts. Hope for going out showing in the battle. Oh, I was so slow. I bringing these your things for we number. Even the day when the trot of them, not a going away. Oh, we have to rebuild the shoreline with the hearts of them now. For all of this shall make the water them pure again. For them be there, our next generation on the sea. Oh yeah, this shall the land, in the land that we. Even as the sea level rise, oh, amongst these your place where the Carolina gold used to grow, and the oyster factory be there. Or you can see we down yonder, in there. Oh, that gets up for now another day. Oh, London chillin' too. Have a going out for get the shrimp, the oyster, or the mullet and all kind of the rest of thing. Oh, every day we stand yonder and look at what it buck of them be to bring. Destruction meant, but make we have to study the water now, for true, but studying for make sure it's pure, for we going into. And so that the next generation going to be like a we. Oh, because we been here, and we ain't going to it all, you see. So we still a stand with other rest of people around the world. Oh, to stand for we shoreline, and with even within the marsh. Oh, that some people not see that they come to the shore ocean like a we. And then yet it more, just to leave it more. But who we be in this your land of the Gullah Geechee, and who I be, the Queen Quet, head on the body of the Gullah Geechee nation. So glad for day on this your shoreline, one more again today. For crack me teeth with 100 children, wherever 100 to be. Ah, but who we be, because we be Gullah Geechee, anointed people. Plenty of time, people are coming here from Jacksonville, North Carolina, to Jacksonville, Florida. Now, yet we crack we teeth like this, yeah. And act like even with these, yeah, them, yeah, and you're not, yeah. And we say, what kind of cracky people is, yeah? Big as we be, you're not see we, tall. So you don't wonder, maybe a need for take the show. And maybe tune in a little bit more with this, yeah, but see who we be. But then I do them tall neither. And then when they yell we, they say, no, it can't be we. Because plenty of times when people come here to the Gullah Geechee Nation between Jacksonville, North Carolina and Jacksonville, Florida now, all through these sea islands that you've seen, and all through what they call the Low Country and the Georgia Isles, 30 to 35 miles inland to the St. Johns River, they don't believe it's us when they hear us speaking this way. They also don't believe we're still here, because unlike 50 years ago, when they could have come and seen massive amounts of bateau boats rowing out into the marsh, coming through the estuaries, right there into the water, where they could have seen these people of African and indigenous descent. And then if they got close enough, they could have yet we the crack we did say, yeah, the water bring we, the water quite take we back. Then they would have believed there was something different about us, and that difference is what they tried to annihilate, actually. That difference was what they said didn't matter, shouldn't exist, should be changed, should be altered. So instead of aligning with their thoughts, instead of buying into their assimilation, instead of allowing them to alter who we be, we stood for our own human rights and became the Gullah Geechee Nation. And here we still stand along the shorelines, fighting to protect our cultural heritage and our cultural tradition that is inextricably tied to the land and the sea. We be the land of we. We be the water that we. We be Gullah Geechee. So when people talk about marine, I immediately see the serene. I see the sea islands. I see this place in which I've been blessed to live. And when I go to a shoreline, whether it's at the ocean or it's along the creek shore, I can feel my ancestors there with me. And within me is the embodiment of multiple generations of those who crafted boats, whether they be wooden, flat bottom boats, we call it bato, or they are the shrimp boats that are the trawlers today. I think back on how their skills of assembling these things, their scientific knowledge didn't come when they reached North America. That knowledge was within their souls and their minds back in Al-Kebula, in the motherland. The unfortunate reality is many of them were the ones kidnapped and captured to be the boat builders, to even build the enslavement vessels, wherein in that belly of the beast came that skill to these sea islands. There also came the skill of sewing nets by hand, cast nets, seine nets, that our elders and our ancestors taught us to use to go out to get things like that. There's a proverb in the world that says, if you teach a man or woman to fish, they can eat for a lifetime, versus when you only give them a fish, they have that only for that one day. So we have had the ability to fish and to feed from the waters for generations. And we want that same thing for the next generation. So what we often say is, "Hona have to go back to old landmark. If one ain't know where hona the from, hona ain't going to know where hona the going." So Sankofa, go back and fetch it. What is it about the water that brought us here? What is it about the water that brings all of us as Black people back to it wherever we be? Whether we in the Caribbean, just like the sea islands, literally living in the sea, whether we are in Bermuda, whether we are off the coast of the motherland, are we stopping to think about what's really in the water and how the water is a part of us? That's been the journey of my people. A journey that has been intense, that has been one of victory and violence, that has been one in which our kidnap and capture brought our knowledge and our ingenuity to a new shoreline where we had to carve out a cultural landscape where there's estuaries, a cultural landscape that amidst those estuaries filled with salt water, we somehow managed to put dikes and trunks and figure out ways to create cisterns that would capture the rain and that we could navigate through to freshwater inlets and bring that into Carolina gold rice fields. Because ain't nobody want nyampa just a fish and thing like that. Everybody dry long self. You want that rice for nyampa too. So every meal that you hear of from a Sea Islander, native Gullah Geechee, more often than not, will have rice in it, even unto this moment. And many will also have seafood. But the thing about it is, do we see that the water is our food? Do we see that the water is spiritually nourishing? That the water, when we breathe in that air, that salinity that I spoke of, connects with those other elements of the human body. That salinity of the air adds that seasoning, that flavor to our very beings that make us so unique. That seasoning that we breathe in is that healing, like sprinkling just a little water in the bathtub, you see. I'm blessed to have the ocean that God allows me to wade into. And it's so many songs here are spiritually connected to, like wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God quite trouble the water. Many people, yeddi, you heard it, but did you know that it came from my ancestors wading in the water as they worked in that Carolina gold rice, wading in the water as they went out through those estuaries to feed their families yet another day. Do you know that today you don't get to hear those songs in the water, but you hear them along the shorelines, because we still got the bush arbor, the Brady's house, and our burial areas all along this shoreline called the Intercoastal Waterway. Also along the shoreline, the waters continue to rise. As those waters rise, as the storms come, because here in the Gullah Geechee Nation, we don't just have 4 seasons, we have 5. We have a hurricane season. Those waters are now impacting those oyster beds that are also that which holds together the sea islands, that which the waters flow over a couple of times a day as our tides rise and they fall, and they rise and they fall. But then too much fresh water getting to them doesn't help them grow like the rice does. Instead, what grows then are what we call vibrios. Some people call it flesh-eating disease, but they say there's no such thing in medical science. But people have to call it what it does. The flesh starts to peel away. There are other problems that people have, and yet we wonder why they don't get it when we say roast your oyster, cook it fully. Don't eat it on the half shell. As classy as you might think that sounds, you might get sick. And so here it is that now we have to concern ourselves with whether it's the stormwater runoff that is causing the ocean to acidify, that's causing less oysters to exist, or is it because their larvae cannot continue to be produced where there aren't enough shells because people have decimated them and not replanted them the way that my grandfather did and the way his grandfather taught him, and so that the shoreline would still be there, holding in place the spartina or spartina grass that is our marsh, that holds in place the maritime forest, that holds in place the sea islands, that then holds in place this nation of the Gullah Geechee. This same place, this same space, this same water that my ancestors, my elders always went out to and were able to get blue crab, and now we struggle to do so because others have come in and overbuilt along the waterway. Didn't believe that any of us being natives, didn't believe that any of us being Black, didn't believe that any of us being women could be scientists that could say to them, we've studied engineering. And when you talk about Marine, we figure you're not just talking about the military bases that are also here in the Sea Islands. What are they talking about? You're talking about us. Because we are this water. This water is who we are. This is practically where we were given birth to, out of one kind of body of water, to be embodied by water. So we can't allow you to poison it by putting structures and pilings, making piers, making docks for individuals, not for everybody, because everything about our nation is communal. When we, now I'm putting the shrimp, now I'm putting the oyster, we have a crab bowl, we have that frogmore stew. Everybody comes together to eat it. Everyone gets to eat. And our ancestors left enough for us to eat in this generation. And we need to do the same for the generation coming behind us. So now I find myself not just going to the water because there's a baptism going on, not just going to the water to go out in the bateau boat and go to the quick show with the family for the day, not just going out to the water just to enjoy it and to breathe it in. Get that unique smell of the pluff mud back in the soul and have it restored. But I find myself going out there with tubes and vessels to collect samples, to then send them off to a lab somewhere to test it, to find out, is it all right? Is it safe? Can we eat from it? I find myself casting a net to only draw in fish that'll be sampled by the Medical University of South Carolina on behalf of the Gullah Geechee Sustainability Think Tank to inform the Gullah Geechee Fishing Association whether or not the fish is safe. The seafood doesn't have PCBs and mercury and doesn't have in it the forever chemical, PFAS. What we want forever is to be here on this intercoastal waterway, on these sea islands, safely being able to harvest from both the land and the sea as our ancestors did. And many times, like I said, it was a vicious journey. It was a treacherous journey when people found that you couldn't just easily navigate the water on any given day, that there were rough seas, like in Cape Fear region in North Kakalaki. They brought in the Gullah Geechee, as they called them, the seamen, the men that knew how to handle the rough waters. They became the Negro seamen that people were concerned about when they realized that, oh, wait a minute, if they go to North Carolina, if they continue northward, they may encounter those who might hand over David Walker's appeal. David Walker had left Wilmington, North Carolina, had gone northward, wrote a document to pass around to who was then called the Negro population, to speak of our rights to be human beings and not be considered 3/5 of one, not be considered somebody's chattel. He knew the value we added to every one of these places that were then the colonies that then became the United States. He knew, and I know, the value that we were, as they wrote in their journals, even as they enslaved us and they sold us, that we are black gold, black cargo. I know that no one calls you gold if you do not produce richness, if you are not richness, if you are not wealthy and valuable. So here it is that they did this psychological game to make you think that, oh no, there's no value in who you are and what you do, but yet we sell you according to your skill set. So if you have the ability to build that boat, you have the ability to navigate the rough waters, you have the ability to know when to harvest certain things and when not to harvest them. You have the ability to know how to go out and not only capture the meal and bring it in, but how to prepare it in such a way that has that flavor to it, that you have the knowledge to transform an entire coastline into a place that unto this day brings in billions of dollars a year for the shoreline. Because of the shoreline, because of these waterways, the estuaries, the sea islands, and the ocean. They don't value you, so they say, but they stole our ancestors. If they had that knowledge for a higher price, their value was higher. They were the commodity on the market. So now who is the new commodity? Technology. Technology, those of us who are technological, we are the new market. We are the new black gold. We are the ones who had the scientific knowledge all along that said, don't build into the water. Don't build into the marsh. These things will not be sustainable. These things will fall when the fifth season comes along the sea islands, which is hurricane season. Tropical storms, hurricanes have thrown buildings into the water, adding to the process people are now calling ocean acidification. Overpaving dirt roads, fill and build of the marsh has damaged the waterways, the estuaries, the coastline so much that the scientists are saying this is adding to ocean acidification. That is not the acid we want. That is not the flavoring that we add to any meal, to any food. We want that same flavor of the clean air, the clean water. That's why we plant the oyster shells back for them to do their job. Cleansing 50 gallons of water a day, one oyster does that. So what would one Black marine scientist do if they created just the right thing to turn all this around, to remove those pollutants from the water in whatever form they might be, to bring the shoreline back to all of we? What would it do if our activists joined in with me, protecting the salt marsh? We want to protect 1 million acres of salt marsh in the Southeast so that we protect the land and the sea for another generation to come. You see, this year, the Gullah Geechee marine journey and we story. The water bring we, the water going to take we back. And so it's a blessed opportunity for me to sit here on the shoreline of my home island, St. Helena, and to speak to all the 100 children, wherever I want to be, that are Blacks in marine science. I'm a computer scientist. I'm a mathematician. And so for me, it's time that we start calculating the cost of what we're doing to the shoreline. And the science has spoken volumes, but are we reading those volumes? Are we letting them float out to the sea? What you think? It's time for we crack we teeth together, for we have hundreds more years right here on another journey, and yeddi more about who we be. And so now, I would love it if the doctor returns and we have an opportunity where I can dialogue a little with y'all. 100 children ain't have to be scared or nothing like that. I can crack my teeth like 100 children can too. As you can see, I am bilingual. So I can speak more than one language here. And so I am really honored to have Dr. Tiara Moore invite me to be part of Blacks in Marine Science, and even more honored to be part of Blacks in Marine Science Week and to bring this keynote, the water, bring we. And so Doc, you think any of the children out there, Dr. Moore, got a little bit to crack your teeth with we bout this year day? You think so? You think they got something to say, Dr. Davis? What you think? You think we can take a few questions, or they ain't got nothing to say today?
They have a lot to say, but I think everyone needs to take a moment and dry their eyes and get back with their soul, because you spoke to everybody. So take a deep breath, folks.
Yes, breathe
and
in.
I think the breathing section, I was breathing with you because I can do more of that in my day. So let's do a few more of those, folks online.
Let's do that. Let's do that, Dr. Davis. Yes.
And breathe in that ocean. I am sitting very close to the ocean. So I am feeling the salt come into my body now.
Yeah. Bring that flavor. Bring the flavor. Yes. So yes, I want to savor the flavor. Thank y'all. I can see a lot of comments. Yeah, I see a lot of comments.
Oh, I hear
Dr. Moore, Dr. Tiara, yes. Peace and love.
To come in and just say hello. I'm all out of order, but I had to come in and say,
it's all love.
Yes. That was so awesome. I was literally in tears just hearing you speak, and just the passion and just everything. The comments are going wild right now. Everybody is doing so much praise. So Yes, YouTube, this is your chance to ask all of your questions that you need. Put them in the chat. Sorry, Dr. Davis, I'm gonna go back behind my thing, but I just could not come on here and say hello.
That's all right.
Thank
I
you
got
so
love for
much.
you, sister. I appreciate you. And I always tell folks, you know, I'm the queen, so I got to have a tiara. I got to have a tiara. Yeah. So I ain't mad. Put that on me. I got to.
Put the
Yes.
tiara on. Put the tiara
Yes.
on.
Got the
I love
tiara
it.
on, baby. Yes. Love you. Love you. Appreciate y'all so much.
Well, I see some questions coming in. So I'm going to start with what's in the chat, and then there's a little bit of a delay between the chat and appearing in our window. So as I see those gaps, I'll fill in with some questions that I have that I was writing down as you were speaking. The first is coming from Miss Laura Sullivan. The question is, can you talk about the role of spirituality and spiritual practices in the resistance to environmental destruction and to gentrification and displacement?
Absolutely.
That's a lot.
Absolutely. Believe you me, if you are in any movement of righteousness, you have to have some type of spiritual foundation. And so here in the Gullah Geechee Nation, many may not realize this, but the songs that are called the Negro spirituals, which you don't need the word Negro, just the spirituals, those songs actually came from the Sea Islands. Gullah Geechees created those songs. Many of those songs got anglicized as they continued to go inland, and you had Anglo people trying to figure out the words we were saying so they could try to put shape notes to them and all that kind of thing. So there are numerous. I did a couple of them, and I did like pieces of them for you all today. But there are numerous spirituals that I tap into whenever I am doing this work. And I don't care where it is. It's that I have sung at the United Nations. I've actually been asked to sing at the United Nations. And then the greatest honor there was to have someone who had been an opera teacher for years ask me if I was an opera singer. And I've never sung opera, but she gave me an interest in it because she said that. But my thing was, opera is the song of Italy, and it speaks to the soul there. So here it is that our songs that speak to the soul are the spirituals. So when you're talking about a movement about environmental justice shouldn't be just us, but many times it feels like that. So that's why you have to be spiritually grounded. So you have that spiritual foundation to stand on, whether you're on land or on the shoreline or in the midst of the water. And so that holds you up, it lifts you up. They say all tides raise all boats. Well, yes, you need to be raised by that at times. So definitely when we're talking about resistance to environmental injustice, we always talk about we're in the environmental justice movement because we seek justice, but it's because of environmental injustice, we have to tap into those things. And so whether we're doing a rally, going before politicians, staging something someplace, many times it's the spirituals that end up being used as the songs that still inform the soul as people find that energy to keep going forward. And so it was used in the 50s and the 60s in the civil rights movement. Many spirituals got altered, the verses got altered. You can do the same thing now and continue the resistance. Yes.
I think I'd like to keep going down this resistance path. And I know in the work that I do, traditional ecological knowledge is becoming a phrase of how to incorporate this long history that this nation has had, this non-European based history, into the way we think about the planet, conservation, rehabilitation, and all of those things. So how has your work been able to bring the Gullah Geechee history and knowledge of the oceans and the ways to utilize the oceans into how we now operate at the management and governmental levels?
Excellent question, a timely question, because I have lately been dealing with what I call the government alphabet soup. And I literally have a meeting coming up with NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. And why do they want to meet with me? Because they want to know how can they work with the Gullah Geechee. And no doubt to learn more from us about our Gullah Geechee sustainability plan and our ocean action plan. And we have incorporated these plans and have spoken to various levels of government, whether it's local, such as town governments and so forth, or we're talking about the state governments with general assemblies, or the federal government. And then, of course, the United Nations work informs that work. So the more that I have opportunities to engage, and I've been on Capitol Hill, I've had the opportunity to testify on behalf of the ocean, okay, and to say that it is the knowledge of the indigenous people that include the Gullah Geechee that have been, as we say, we'd have been we Guinaway for hundreds of years on the coast, living in balance with the resources of the coast, because we recognize the fact that everything has life. And so we respect the water as a spiritual body that gives life. Just as much as the water is serene, the water can be dangerous too. And I know you know that, Doc, okay? But many times when people are coming in to do work in a political manner, like if they're in a political agency, let's say, for instance, the EPA that I'm doing a lot of work with these days, they have a certain list that they're often given that says, well, as long as you do this and this and this, you've done what you need to do. And that perfunctory list for decades never included community engagement to incorporate the knowledge of the people who literally live on the land or operate out of that body of water. So I have continued to go into every arena I can, conferences, meetings with these federal agencies, writing in, following what's going on in the Federal Register, to also, when they say they want public comments, to comment. And to comment with each one of those agencies to inform not only policy changes, but sometimes it's just simply a change within their operations. How can they change their behavior right now? How can they do something that incorporates the knowledge of the people that literally live there and, in many cases, as you know, suffer there? So when we talk about resistance, the people are saying, don't build here, then you need to listen to that. So we have to then inform these folks. And there are numerous videos. If people who are watching on YouTube now, I don't want you to jump off of this, but later on, go to gullahgeechee.tv, and subscribe. You can look for Queen Quet Oceans, Queen Quet Climate Action, Queen Quet Congress, Queen Quet Testifies, and there are numerous videos that you can literally hear what I've had to say. And one of the best things I think I've had an opportunity to do is to be invited to actually help unveil the Ocean-Based Climate Solutions Act, and to be able to inform people how important that act is to traditional knowledge communities, to indigenous communities, because it actually respects our knowledge. And it wants people to incorporate this consistent interaction with the people, not just a parachute in, parachute out type of thing, but actually working to build relationships in communities of people of color, as they call us now, BIPOC communities, right? So I've done a lot of different work, and it takes being diligent about keeping up with a lot of this stuff, and also making sure you respond. Never think that your voice is not of value. So make sure that you continue to do that. And if you have to use social media, use it. You use a blog, use it. You can write op-eds, use it. You can take them on a field trip, which is what I love to do with politicians, literally take them out there and show them. Then they go, oh, wow, because they never forget the experience. Use it. And it can make all the difference in the world, but it won't happen 1, 2, 3. I know y'all generation, I know millennials, I know y'all want it right now. It is not going to happen as quick as Snapchat. It is not going to happen as quick as a 1 to 3 minute video. It's going to take years, but keep at it. It makes a difference.
This conversation hit a chord with quite a few folks. It seems like this interaction with government, speaking the voice and bringing that information forward is something that quite a few people are working on and wanting to be part of. So some follow-up comments in the chat. Amanda Wise is asking, how does the government currently collaborate with the Gullah Geechee Nation to preserve and protect the land? So what are you doing now? And could you improve that relationship? And I think maybe that is how would that relationship be improved, and how did you establish that relationship, and what is that, what would that look like? And I'm going to ask Amanda if you could put a follow-up in the chat. Is this more for how do individual people would begin to start their own interactions, if for other traditional
knowledge community
indigenous folks? Exactly. So I think that's the train, but I don't want to get that wrong.
Okay, I got you, but I did see what she was asking, so I'll answer it a couple of ways. The first thing is, if you come from a community like mine, I'm an elected head of state. So I am the spokesperson for the Gullah Geechee Nation, for Gullah Geechee people. So we have a council of elders and we have an assembly of representatives. So if people come to them and they say, this is an issue in the community, and I see that this is definitely an issue that is impacting us because of federal laws, for instance, a federal policy, then it is my job to find out what federal agency it is that is enacting this. Sometimes they send you through a bunch of long corridors to find whose responsibility it really is. So you better get ready and put on some good walking shoes or good boots, even if it's waders sometimes, because sometimes you got to wade through a lot of nonsense to get to the right set of folks. Once you get there, again, be able to fully articulate what it is that has happened in your community and how you know that there are things that can be done better. Do not allow yourself to be intimidated by these little checklists that I mentioned earlier. So when you ask, who do we work with now? I'm going to go back to me mentioning that we're currently doing a lot of work with the EPA. I've worked with EPA Region 4 for a couple of decades already, but we have finally gotten them to build real relationships with the Gullah Geechee Nation. I have gone as far as going to Boston and teaching EPA people how they should do cultural collaboration. Because when you are talking about dealing with people of color, we are not linear in the way that we interact in terms of our cosmology and our ideologies. It's not linear, it's circular. And so there has to be adjustments because the way the US government works is linear. It's very Western and it's hierarchical, where in most indigenous communities, it's like ours, it's circular. So we are working together. We're coordinating things together and we're thinking about the collective as a whole. So usually if you're talking about an indigenous community structured like this, that one person might go in, but they're going in to bring everybody in. And they're bringing you the messages of the elders and the younger people and everybody in the community. They're not going just bringing themselves in the door. Okay, so to answer that part of it with the EPA now, they came through, we applied for this thing called a building blocks grant. At first, the county said, well, we could go after it, Queen Quet, but they usually deal with cities. I said, I'm not talking about what they usually do. I said, what we're going to do is we're going to apply for it for a sea island, because we're not a city. We're not a township. We're not an incorporated area. However, your incorporated areas around us, like Hilton Head and Fripp, in these areas, are damaging us. So if you all now have set boundaries around them that you call growth boundaries, then the way we are going to pitch this or propose it is such that we are going to work on this sea island to protect it and sustain it and enhance it while it is Gullah Geechee centric. We are going to use that model to do that as an example of what could be modeled on other sea islands to protect them from what happens with incorporated areas. I'm sure the county thought at first, we probably not going to get this. I think they were stunned when we did get selected. But when we got selected and the EPA folks showed up, they showed up with the workbook. They said, well, this is how we work in the communities. We do this first, and that's a month. And then this is 2 months. And this is 3 months. I said, hold up. We don't have time for all that. I said, we don't have time for that because literally our lives are in jeopardy right now. And people are stressed out enough. We are not going to spend time with you asking people the same questions they've already answered. We already know we have our own needs assessment already completed. We will provide that to you. So we tell you what the needs of the community are. And now we want you all to work as we guide you in the way that our culture works. And we shifted the whole thing around very quickly. They said, well, I said, so if y'all have to work from that workbook, I don't think you're going to be working here. They said, actually, we don't have to. This is just what we normally do in other communities. But if you don't think we need it, out it goes. Tell us what y'all need. We were able to then get landscape architects to be paid by the EPA to work with us on a resiliency plan for St. Helena Island that I'm a native of. We have now gotten landscape architectural renderings of various things, everything from protecting the salt marsh, because I'm also part of the Southeast Atlantic Salt Marsh Initiative that we call Marsh Forward, to protect 1 million acres of marsh, as I mentioned earlier. I'm also working with the Marine Installation Resiliency Review Team. And these things are all interconnected with the alphabet soup of the government, the DOE and the DO. The only one I think not in here is the DOG that we're working with now because of Surpass with the group with the salt marsh. Then we're working with the EPA with the landscape architects. Now that they've finished the building blocks grant part with the landscape architects and gave us renderings of what we want to build resiliency hubs around areas that can help us, that we use as landings and so on, and community gathering spaces. Now we have that to show to the county. We have that to show to the state. We have visuals that we can say to them, now that there is this money from the infrastructure plan, why don't you finance these ways to improve our causeways? Why don't we finance this? And because the people at the EPA were willing to step back, their egos were not engaged. That's your biggest issue usually, is whether this person's ego is engaged and they just don't want to move out of your way or not. That makes all the difference in the world. They loved what they have been able to learn from us as much as I have learned more about landscape architecture from them and been sharing that from the community. So now we are building a relationship right here on the Sea Islands, where now other agencies are asking them, well, we saw this, we saw ABC News, and we saw Queen Quet mention y'all, she did a lecture we heard about the EPA. How can we work with the Gullah Geechee Nation? And then I'm sure they're informing them, well, please don't go in with your workbook. Go in with an open mind and let's work together. Let's sit in the circle on the shoreline, is how I express it to them. And then let's dialogue about what we already know we need, instead of you asking us the same questions again. And let's resource these things so they are not needs for another generation, another decade. So it's going to take consistency. It's going to take prayer. It's going to take a lot of breathing. All right, at times, because they have to write their reports. They got to get their report out of it. But you have to make sure that what they report on is what your community wants, and that you can take that to the next level and get it resourced and get it put in place, and also get the technical skills into your community that you can use whether they come back or not. So it's a multifold process that, as much as I've spoken, that's still the Reader's Digest version of how you really do it. But that gives you a start. And y'all can always email me. I'll drop my email in the chat and I'll mention it again later. But you can always email me. You can find me on Gullah Geechee Nation on Facebook. That's my fan page as well. And you can follow me at Gullah Geechee on Twitter. And we can always dialogue some more. But I'm queenquet.com online. So y'all can find me. We can dialogue some more and engage some more.
I like how you changed the narrative and informed us on changing the narrative, because that really is important. The U.S. doctrine follows one train of interaction, and many of our tribal and Native folks do not. That is not the structure, and that conversation often can be one-sided. Like you said, that checkbook, people come forward with that checkbook, and it's not always going to fit. You need to change the dialogue and be consistent with that dialogue. So thank you for that.
Now, we don't mind them coming forward with a checkbook, Doc. They can come forward with a checkbook. Now, it's all right to come with a
checklist.
Okay,
checklist.
Yeah. You had a full body, but the checklist is the one right, that we're like, hold it now. Yes, yes. But they can come on with the checkbooks now. Anybody watching, we all right, we good. Blacks and Marine Science, they can take a little funding. The Gullah Geechee Nation can take some funding. Come with the checkbooks. Thank you. And it is Giving Tuesday.
Woo! All right. So I was reading through your website. I took a little visit to your website, and will soon be a fan. So that's not going to be a difficult transition. And you mentioned on the front page there was recognition as a people, and I know that that is a very specific process from some of the tribal folks, and that's more of the cultural resources that I'm familiar with. And so has that transition, because that was recent, I think it said 2006.
Yes.
Right. So how has that changed in how your communications with Congress, with the nation, and with the state about these environmental, cultural heritage pieces and the saving and protecting of the resources to promote health of of people in those communities? How has that recognition helped the process, or did it open any doors, or was it just kind of, oh look, we put some signatures to look good, but no,
it was more the latter, and in the end of it, it was more of the latter, because what the federal government felt was they created this national heritage area. But what they didn't realize was, because we had already stood on our human right to self-determination and become a nation in international human rights law, then you are granting sovereignty to that particular ethnic group, even by US domestic law. So that means that there is a higher level of engagement that you need to have, and you need to respect the actual indigenous leaders, not a group of people you commission to lead them. So what ends up happening is that because people ended up focusing on a national heritage area as a commodity, as a place that we already have tourism. Oh, well, maybe we could just use Gullah Geechee culture for more tourism. Then things were derailed for a few years because people were focusing on that. You had academics trying to get involved. No insult to any academics here, but the point is, a lot of academics just saw an opportunity to get tenure, to research who were the Gullah Geechee. And then the politicians are just like, well, we already passed the law, so we did that, right? And we're on to the next thing. So it still took the native traditionalists of the Gullah Geechee Nation to continue to push and fight for our right to resources, our human right to those resources, our earth and our water rights. We are still fighting cases and battles against sand mining, against plutonium pit mining, against environmental injustices. I am serving on consultative parties against a spaceport being placed here on our coast. So it's a constant work that ends up happening. It's not like a one-off thing. Oh, they recognize you. Now they say, well, here's your key. You can open all these doors and these resources in each door. It never happens that way. You have to continue to still fight for your rights and do your due diligence about what are those things that belong to you, and then make sure you have folks that are going to strategically come in and get those resources and bring them back home. And so it is critical. So it's been very interesting because in the international community, we've long since been recognized. It took the US having to recognize their wrongs and say, you know what, they are right. They should be recognized because Gullah Geechees are a critical part of US history. So my thing is, what they have to do now is step up to the plate and help make sure there is the continuation of Gullah Geechee culture, not the preservation of it. Because preservation, if you from the South, you know what I mean, put it in a jar and tighten the lid tight. My mother and I do jarring and canning. And any scientist here know, then okay, we cut that air off, so it's on the shelf for now. But whenever we're ready, we can pop the top on it, expel what's in there, and it's done. We can throw the jar away, we can rinse it out, and it's over. So I'm not about preservation, less about historic buildings. When it comes to my community, my culture is about continuation. And in order to continue, every administration, we have to be in there informing them and many times educating them that we even exist and that we are still here. And like I said before, if we the Binya and we the Guano with tall.
Thank you. I would, in our last few minutes, I guess it's 1:55 and I got to start wrapping this up. Oh my goodness. I believe I'm right. I'm going to have to call Dr. Sierra and Jeanette on if I am off my timing. But
right, it was my fault.
Yeah.
So we just had a good flow going. That's what we do here in the ocean, have a good flow going. And let me just say this before you close out, before they come on, for everybody that really wants to know how we can engage and we can work together beyond even today. because all of us who are Blacks in marine science and in science period, I believe it's high time that we work together. Please go to GullahGeecheeLand.com. Gullah is spelled Gullah. Geechee is Geechee. Ain't no I in Geechee if it'll we, okay? Gullah Geechee Land, land.com. There is a sign up piece on there. So you could actually sign up to volunteer to work with us. You can become a member of the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition that I founded. You can make donations to our Gullah Geechee Land and Legacy Fund there. That's where that checkbook come in, you know, the checkbook and all that comes in. And so definitely you can go there, sign up. That's a way to stay in touch with us and to be added to our database. And as I mentioned before, you can also go to Gullah Geechee Nation on Facebook, but you can also follow GullahGeecheeNation.com. GullahGeecheeNation.com. And that way you can keep up with all the events and activities, because we're having our Coastal Cultures Conference here, April 8th and 9th of 2022. And I would love for my sister Tiara to come. I would love for you to come, Doc, and all of y'all to come down and engage in some sessions, literally right here on the water. And then Hona Chilla know why I say the water to bring we and the water go and take we. Thank you, y'all, and have a blessed set of holy days, as this is a great way for me to begin the celebration. What greater way to celebrate than with Blacks in Marine Science for your week. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for your keynote. This was a great experience for me to hear both your words and your wisdom and guidance towards how to be more active, I think, in the presentation of our science and our historical knowledge, and motivation to continue to remember that we are part of the ocean, we are part of this land, and that is something that we will always have within us. Our history gives us that. And so thank you very much. And thank you all to our community for joining us today. If you have any questions in the chat, Black Marine Science has been posting all of the different websites and that Queen Quet has mentioned. And so please follow those links and stay active in your in gaining information for yourself about the fight and the persistence of our people. So make sure to follow Black Marine Science continuing on through the rest of this week. We have a lot of great events coming up, and including the next event, which is BIMS Care, because we all need some care to maintain our minds and our bodies and our spirit. So it is Live Mindfulness and Live Mindfulness. Oh my goodness. It's a session with a therapist, and that'll happen later on this evening from 6 to 6:30. If you're on the East Coast, I gotta do some math for the West Coast. So I'm not gonna say that out loud because I'll get it wrong. So don't miss it. I'd like to bring back our session host, Jeanette Davis.
Thank you. And thank you to our moderator, Dr. Shante Davis. Thank you to our dynamic and knowledgeable keynote speaker, Queen Quet, Chieftess and Head of State for the Gullah Geechee Nation. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence here today. Again, you've just tuned into the Wata We Bring. Make sure that you guys tune in this Saturday for the National Aquarium for free giveaways based on the questions from this keynote today. So thanks again, and I hope to see you all at 6 p.m.